the first thing is to understand that the primary feeling that is beneath all of that is fear of survival. And it's amazing how many people so one of the practices I do in psychotherapy is I encourage people to start to give me blurt first thought answers.
Welcome to the Women Choosing Growth podcast, where we bring you practical advice and guidance on how to grow your business and achieve success in your entrepreneurial journey. We feature inspiring stories of success, challenges of growth, and lessons learned from women entrepreneurs, industry experts, and thought leaders who have been through the growing pains inevitable as an entrepreneur. Whether you are just getting started or are looking to scale up your business, our show is designed to provide you with the tools, resources, and community you need to grow your business. Join your host, Tina, a lifelong entrepreneur and business growth advisor, as we explore topics such as marketing, sales, finance, leadership, and personal growth, all tailored specifically to the needs of women entrepreneurs. So if you're ready to grow your business faster and smarter, and learn from the experiences of those who have traveled the growth path before you, then this podcast is for you. Thanks for tuning in, and let's get started.
Welcome to the show, ladies. I know it seems obvious on the surface of life that if you're stressed, you're not your best self, and therefore you aren't giving your business 100% either. But it's not as easy as like, oh, you just reduce your stress and you'll be all the things that you want it to be. It's really more than that. And today we have with us Natalie Baker, who has helped thousands transform their mental well-being by blending Eastern and Western psychology, empowering clients to take control of their mental health. She also is bringing us actionable advice so that you can be your best self. Well, most of the time anyway. Stress is still going to happen, but happy to have you here, Natalie. I think this is a topic we all need to hear from you. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. I'm really excited. This is one of my favorite topics.
Yes. And it's one of those topics that everyone can relate to. I'm at the point in my life where stress is a lot less than it was when my kids were little and I was, bootstrapping my first business. But stress is in everybody's life. And there are ways to, control it, really, right?
Absolutely. And I think in my experience over the years, both in observing my own stress, as a parent, as a business owner, as well as working with clients, one of the things that's most important, which may seem like not that exciting, is building awareness and understanding what stress is.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of us think, oh yeah, I know stress isn't good. But when we actually understand how stress manifests in our lives, and then we look critically at what we value, what we think is positives, what we discover is that actually we are reinforcing stress in our lives. So the first thing I want to share with people is just a basic understanding of the brain and how the brain operates independently in creating a stress response.
Mm-hmm.
So just to kind of get nerdy here for a second, the brain, one of its primary jobs is to keep us alive.
Mm-hmm.
And part of keeping us alive isn't just keeping us breathing, keeping us digesting. Part of keeping us alive is keeping us safe from danger. And the stress response, which is part of the functioning of the limbic brain, you can think of that as like our reptilian brain, that part of the brain operates independently of what you can think of as your like higher functioning self, your willful self, the part of you that can execute on a plan, that can have self-awareness. That is, we can roughly call that the front of your head, your prefrontal cortex, and that reptilian brain is like the center of your brain. And that part of our brain operates independently because Safety from danger is defined very specifically by the brain, and that is something may cause me bodily harm in less than a minute. So I need to be able to react. And my 3 tools that I use to solve the problem of my safety is run from it, punch it, play dead. Those are the
Okay.
3 strategies: fight, flight, freeze. And so, in and of itself, that's a fabulous function, right? So essential. If there's a bear charging us, we need to be able to, in an instant, react and run and then get safe. And the way the structure is supposed to work is that we're supposed to identify a danger, react quickly with punch it, run from it, play dead, and then come back into what's called regulation. This is my fancy graph. Here is the fight flight energy up above, and then down below is the freeze response. And in the middle section is the most important, which is regulation. When the brain perceives safety, it wants to be calm. It wants to be able to focus. That's when we're playful. That's when we're spontaneous. That's when we can, be thoughtful about the 16 stages of the plan and not get overwhelmed. So that's when the brain is perceiving safety. And I'll just say what the problem is here. The problem is we get habitual. And so the brain takes little cues from the present and decides, oh, now is like then. And it acts as if we're in danger in the present moment, but we're actually not. We're having a challenging conversation with our spouse. We're not actually under threat, but now I'm yelling at my spouse, right? Wrong strategy for resolving the present moment situation. Or I'm not sleeping, right?
Mm.
The brain doesn't want to sleep if it thinks you're in danger, right? And so there are people, going back to my first comment, who are like, Natalie, they think it's just so great. I only sleep 5 hours a night. Isn't that amazing? I can operate on 5 hours, right? But the truth of the matter is your limbic brain actually is not letting you sleep more. We know science tells us any less than really 6.5, 7 hours of sleep, now you have a correlation with illness.
Yep.
And so our challenge is that our limbic brains operate on autopilot, think we're in danger, and use those 3 strategies: punch it, run from it, play dead. And we can talk more about what that looks like when it becomes a chronic stress response, right? Less sleep, more irritability, feeling exhausted, etc. But that part of the brain is on autopilot. It's hijacked our ability to make appropriate decisions in the here and now, to use a full toolkit of strategies. And we identify with some of that stress as our mojo, right? So that's a very common thing that I see in women who are overwhelmed, is that they're identifying the anxious, hypervigilance, burnout energy of that fight flight energy as their asset. That is what allows them to do everything they need to do. And they're fearful, if you take that energy away from me, how am I going to function in the world? And so that's another example of how we don't recognize that we're using a strategy that isn't the most effective. It's the one we've used the most, but it's actually not the most effective for facing and working with all the myriad challenges we face every day.
So when you describe that, I have this person that I know pretty well in my head. Very smart salesperson, so on the go all the time, high earner, but translates all of that, like busy to the point where it blows my mind. Like it is exhausting to watch where she's going, what she's doing in a day. And she's the exact, I think what you're explaining, it was like that's her life. And she feels even more successful. The busier that I am and the more things that I'm doing and the more things I'm tackling and the less sleep that I get, I'm crushing life.
Right.
But that can't be healthy.
Right. And that's the unfortunate piece, is that it's not healthy, because the body's set up to use the stress response energy for sprints, and we're using it to like run the marathon of life. And
Every
so,
day.
yeah, exactly. And when it's what I witness in men who live on the stress response, they typically show up in my office in their early 40s. And they've either had a panic attack and they thought they were having a heart attack and they went to ER, or the sleep issue is now really getting to them, or their relationships are falling apart. And it's kind of like they're forced into the self-examination of, why am I falling apart? Right? Like,
Yes.
as you said, I'm killing it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which
I'm
interesting
crushing life.
language.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting correlation there. So anytime I say I'm killing it, I'm going to have to like think, but what am I killing? Well, break
Exactly.
this down for us. Cause I think as we're saying here, everyone can relate to stressful moments, some more than others. So like, what are the steps to it? Like how, when you are in that situation with a spouse, or you've got a lot on your plate at work, or it's the season where both your kids are in 3 different sports because they're overlapping and you have all the other things to do, like where do we begin with being mindful of this and then having a little more control over it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think the first thing is to understand that the primary feeling that is beneath all of that is fear of survival. And it's amazing how many people so one of the practices I do in psychotherapy is I encourage people to start to give me blurt first thought answers. And so I will say to somebody, who's in this, hyperdrive, and I'll say, I want you to give me your first thought answer to this question. I don't want you to think about it. And I say, what do you think is going to happen to you if you don't make the same amount of money this year as you did last year? And often what comes out, first thought, is a very extreme answer. I'm going to die. We're going to be homeless. We're going to be out on the street. He's going to
Interesting.
divorce me. Right?
Wow. Okay.
So recognizing that we are working under assumptions that are probably not true. Like, and
Mhm.
I had given you, to put in the show notes, a couple of little short quizzes people can take to kind of measure where they're out on the burnout scale, which is basically how much you're living in that stress response. And so first, to start with just taking your own assessment of like, what am I operating under? What's the energy I'm using to fuel my life? And if you're scoring high on those, or you're not sleeping, easily 7 to 8 hours a night, you're irritable, you're exhausted, you feel overwhelmed, you feel like mental, like fogginess, confusion, those can be signs that your body is using a stress response. So first is to just assess and to become aware. And part of that awareness is this understanding that your brain is acting as if you're about to die. And
Mhm.
so just the simple practice of taking a deep breath, like 3, 1, 2, 3 in, pause, count to 7 out. That's a really simple way to get that parasympathetic nervous system. That's the rest and digest nervous system, to tell that brain, hey, we're actually safe. So that's one really simple intervention you can do throughout the day. And then the other thing is to really start to change our self-talk.
Mhm.
I am not about to die. We are not about to become homeless, right? whatever the extreme thinking is that goes with kind of being in that habitual go mode is very helpful. Our minds can either help us de-stress or they can keep that stress reactivity in place. And, you and I talked in our previous conversation about like what helps anybody to know that it's okay to let go for the day.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
And you said like, oh, I just make some notes on my phone and then like, I'm good.
Yep.
Right. So now the bear is in the phone.
Yeah. The bear's in the phone for tomorrow.
Yeah, till tomorrow
He
and
can
let it
come
back
back
out.
out tomorrow. Come back out tomorrow when I'm fresh after sleeping 8 hours. Yes.
Right. So really another thing is really recognizing like what are the cues that I can use that allow myself to pivot out of that go mode and into relaxation mode, into letting go, focusing more on the present, on pleasure, on, what's happening with family members, that we all have a different style, right? For some people, it's like, end of the day, I exercise. And that's my cue of like, okay, work mode is over, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm in take care of my body, take care of myself mode. And so, really, also, then another thing is really establishing boundaries. Like, if you're threatened, right, and there's a bear at the edge of the woods, it's really not a good idea to take time off because you always need to check in and see, did the bear get closer? Is it further away? Right. So that's why you don't sleep as well. And that's why you fixate mentally on work, for example, if work is like the potential threat.
Yep.
And so having those boundaries, like putting, the notes in the phone, or like the last call of the day is at whatever time, and then I switch gears, and really giving yourself a schedule is another way. And, I'll say this is kind of the last basic intervention that everybody has access to is exercise. It is
Mm-hmm.
the number one antidepressant out there. And
Yep.
so if you're wondering, what can I do? Go for a 20-minute vigorous walk. And if you won't let yourself stop working, do a work call when you're walking.
Yep.
But if you can, call a friend.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I actually shared that with you, but that, except for right now, because it is like negative 10 degrees in Wisconsin. So there is no walk after work, but most of the months that is my transition between work brain is done and family time is about to begin. And I go for a 3-mile walk around our neighborhood, same loop, listen to a completely non-work related audiobook. And then by the time I get home, I'm like ready to make dinner and hang out with the fam. But when I don't do that, my work continues to trickle into the family time, and I'm still thinking about that. Like I learned years ago that I needed that completely different viewpoint. I'm out of the house. I'm listening to something completely unrelated to work without that kind of chapter break, if you will, in my day. It just kind of like work trickled into evening. So that's one of those things.
Great.
Perfect. Like it's the exercise, it's the clear cutoff in my day. Not that I don't check an email. I think I shared that with you. I check my email before I go to bed so that I can sleep and go, oh, okay. Like these are the things there's where the bear is. I can handle
Right.
that in the morning. But that's just me. Some people don't. But I've learned what stresses me out and how to solve most of the time. Obviously, no one's perfect, but
Right. And, it's not like we're going to get rid of stress. We're not going to get rid of the stress response, right? It's a fundamental part of our being. It's part of our survival brain.
I want it when the bear or the bus comes. Like if there's a bus coming, I don't want my stress to be on some vacation.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And, studies show that when you can talk to yourself about revving up for an event, that stress, hyperarousal that happens, that to see that as a positive, right? Oh, I'm revving up because I'm giving that presentation.
Mm-hmm.
No, my colleagues in the room aren't hyenas. They're not about to like rip me apart, but this is an exciting moment. And so my system is revving up. Isn't that great? And when we attach a mindset, a positivity to that stress, what it shows is that people come back into that regulation zone post presentation much faster.
Mm-hmm.
So really recognizing that it is there to support us, but it is not there to tell us there's some fundamental threat to our being. That's not true. And that's
That's
what we
lovely.
have to really, from a mindset point of view, really challenge.
Hey, incredible women entrepreneurs. It's Tina Sue here. I know you're juggling a lot, growing your business, managing family time, and trying to find balance. Deep down, you know you're capable of so much more. But maybe fear or uncertainty is holding you back from achieving that dream business, that dream life that you deserve. That's why I created the Dream Big, Plan Bigger guide, a game changer for your business growth. This isn't just another goal-setting document. It's your personal roadmap to achieving the impossible. Imagine having a clear vision of your biggest dreams, breaking through the barriers that hold you back, and reigniting that passion that fuels your journey. This guide is your roadmap to doing just that without compromising your family time or your personal priorities. You deserve to see your business thrive and still have time for what you love. Let's take this journey together. Download your free Dream Big, Plan Bigger workbook now at tina-sue.com and start making those dreams a reality. Now, let's get back to the show. I think so far the biggest takeaway, I know you have some more good stuff. The biggest thing that I probably am going to take away and apply and share as much as I can is really when you feel yourself in that stress, think about what really is the outcome of this thing. Like
Great.
you said, you're not getting a divorce just because you had a fight and a bad day, and your kids are not going to be bullied if they're not in all 5 sports at one time. And, literally, I
Right.
think that's that's what I'm referring to. Like it's more stressful to have the kids in all those things than it would be to like have a normal schedule. So I think when we feel that way, to take that time, like take a step out of your life, be the third person looking at yourself and be like, well, Tina, is that really the end of the world if this project doesn't get completed? Or if you're on stage and you make a complete fool of yourself, like what's the
Yeah.
worst thing that could really happen?
Exactly. That's perfect. That's perfect because when you orient in the here and now, which is what you're describing, right? Now you're giving counter information to that fear brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying, actually, what reality is, I'm safe. And literally to look around your room, literally, and through your sense perceptions, describe and feel and see what is true about the here and now. There is no immediate threat to myself. So I can use a different part of my brain to problem solve,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like you said, I am not getting a divorce. My children are not spiraling out of control and never going to get into a good college because X event is happening, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we take the present moment and we slam up against it some horrible outcome. And to
Mm-hmm.
recognize when we're doing that and then to challenge it is a really great strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. You want to roll through your, we'll cut
Oh,
this part
yeah,
out, but
sure.
yeah.
I'm happy to keep going. As you might have
Keep it.
noticed, I do love to talk about this topic.
Yes.
Yeah, no, one of the things that you and I talked about, specifically thinking about women in business, is really the mindset that we have. And we're biologically wired for this, which is we prioritize others over ourselves. And
Yes.
of course, if we have offspring and they're vulnerable and they will only live if we're there attending to them, right? That is a very important expectation to have, their needs first. But what I observe in women I work with, and I know I see it in myself as a small business owner, is that also becomes an obstacle to success when I prioritize others over myself, as if it's either or, right? And that's part of the sneaky thing. It's like we get into this habituation of like deny oneself and just focus on the needs of other. And it's not really like that. And there's so much benefit that can come to other, whether the other is our children, our spouse, our employees, if we take care of our nervous systems. So one of the things I wanted to say is that nervous systems are connected. And we know this. If we're parents, we know this. As children, right? If you think back to being a kid, you could kind of feel if things were okay in the house, right? Or
Sure.
if there was
Yep.
something, right? And that didn't come from some data we were presented with on a piece of paper. It came from a feeling. And so our nervous systems are connected. So if we re-regulate our nervous system, we come into that zone of regulation. That's when the brain is perceiving the environment as safe and secure, right? And so if you think about how productive am I going to be, is my team going to be if the alpha nervous system is in that state of dysregulation and sending out, let's say, the vibes of we're not safe, we're not secure, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're basically telling the team, use punch it, run from it, play dead to
Yeah.
solve work's challenges. And I see this over and over again. So one of the things I offer in my practice is a technology called neurofeedback. And neurofeedback is an extension of biofeedback. So biofeedback is like, you measure like skin temperature change or like heart rate, and you're going into a stress response. You do some
Like the
deep
aura
breathing.
rings.
Yeah, exactly. And so then you use your conscious mind to like down regulate the nervous system. And neurofeedback is going directly to that limbic brain and communicating with it. So it requires EEG sensors on the side of the head so that we track the electrical communication of the brain. And then we give it feedback when it's going into state change, right? And specifically, we want it to see those maladaptive stress response state changes. And then we alert the brain in the present moment through interruptions in music you're listening to, which is basically cueing that limbic brain to pay attention to itself. And what it will do is it'll contrast what it's about to do with the present moment environment. So if it's about to do a stress response and then it's like cued to see that it's in a safe room, your brain is going to change what it's doing, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
that's an inefficient use of energy, and that's not good problem solving. And so neurofeedback is a way to let that limbic brain see its habitual patterns and then change them. And neurofeedback is used a lot with kids who have neurodivergent issues, whether it's ADHD or autism. And so I work with a lot of moms who want to do, neurofeedback for their kids with ADHD. And we always see much better results in the child if the mother or the primary caregiver does the neurofeedback along with the child,
Hmm.
because her nervous system re-regulates into that zone of you're safe, we can be focused, creative, we can, be thoughtful, we can plan. And so that child's nervous system, in putting a little sensor in mom and dad and going, oh, are we safe? Right? And they see, oh, yeah, mom's safe now. She's regulated. Then that child's nervous system feels like they have, quote unquote, permission to also go into that regulated zone. And this principle applies like mother-child, mother as boss, right? Because that's alpha energy. And so often with mothers who have the mindset of, no, I'm just helping my child, even though mom is totally stressed out and,
Mm-hmm.
having their own challenges. And also ADHD runs in families. There's a high genetic component to it. And so they may themselves have ADHD and not recognize it. But when I tell them, hey, if you train your brain as well, your child's brain will do better. Then I get them on board.
Yeah, they're bought in then.
Yeah, exactly. And so really having the mindset that taking care of your own nervous system will benefit others and yourself, and to really have that self-compassion and have the priority of self-care, because then it's a win-win.
I love that. And I'm thinking as well of like, don't take that brain's response at face value,
Great. Yes.
right? Like it's not necessarily lying to you, but sort of.
Yeah. It may be telling you about something that happened 30 years ago.
Yeah. Or something that you saw in an extreme movie that would never happen in real life. And now it's portraying it that it's going to happen to you in the next 20 minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Or things I'd imagine, I'd love to hear your take on this, but I would imagine, now that I just think about that too, 30 years ago or 50 years ago in my case, I'd imagine some of those things, like you said, when you're a kid, you notice things or you feel things that aren't data driven to a
Mhm.
6-year-old.
Yeah.
But I wonder if some of those things are in the back of your mind in present time when you're stressed. It's not like, oh, I'm going to turn into the time when my parents were fighting. But so it might not be obvious, but it might be some of those experiences that you had either in your personal life or you saw your friends' lives or other things from way deep down where you
Yes.
can't even acknowledge it. Is that
Yes.
makes sense?
You got it. I mean, and that's a really important thing to understand. There's this really great expression: if it's hysterical, it's historical. So what that means is if
Mm.
the reaction you're having feels outsized to the current situation, and sometimes I'll ask people like, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how extreme was your response? And if your response is over a 4, then I'm going to say you just got hijacked by your limbic brain that took simple cues and went, now is like then.
Mm.
Because then, and the significance, because people ask me, well, like, I wasn't abused as a child. We grew up, middle class, blah, blah, blah. And they'll give me all of the understandable kind of data that supports, like, I was safe and secure as a child. But the thing that we don't appreciate is that there was a period of our lives, which is a very formative time from 0 to, like, I'm going to say 5, where we don't survive unless there is somebody there attending to us. Because
Yep.
literally, we can't feed ourselves, we can't move, we can't, we are vulnerable. And so at that time in our lives, our brains are primed to be in survival mode.
Yep.
So even if the caregiver, right, is gone a little too long, our brains could go into, oh my God, I'm not sure if I'm going to survive. Because at that age, if that caregiver doesn't return, we literally will die because we can't hop up, go into the kitchen, get ourselves some food. And so we don't have to go digging deep into our histories to go,
Call my mom, be like, you must
right,
have left one time and didn't come back, and now
right,
I'm stressed.
exactly. Exactly. That is not necessary, although some people like want to know. But really what we can do is just do our own test in the present moment and go,
Mhm.
how fearful do I feel right now? How upset do I feel right now on a scale of 1 to 10? Or we can ask, what strategy am I using to problem solve? Like I was talking to a client yesterday who was like, my wife said X, and I said, I'm going to the country house for a week. And I was like, oh, isn't that interesting? Your system responded with a flight response. It wanted to bolt. She made a
Extreme.
comment, right? Exactly. And so that's why self-awareness is
Mhm.
such a key part of change, because if we can cultivate a kind, compassionate observer of ourselves that can go, oh, yeah, that was a flight response to my wife's comment that I didn't like.
Mhm.
Oh, interesting. Well, and then allow ourselves to use our prefrontal cortex to go, but what actually was taking place there? Where was she coming from? Empathy is very difficult when we're in that stress response brain.
For sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so, another important reason why we need to support ourselves into coming into regulation so that we can take others' perspective and gather that really important data, which helps us in our personal relationships and our work relationships. And so, awareness is first, kindness, curiosity, right? And then what am I going to use as my tools to downregulate?
Mhm. I like that. And I think, none of us are going to be perfect or stress free, as you mentioned. So even if we do blow up and use the terms of screw it, I'm out of here for a week, it does. Sorry for that person, but it is kind of funny. Um, Acknowledging it, right? Like when you
Yes.
are back in your regulated state, then you can be like, that was completely not cool. And I'm going to go have a conversation with my wife. And now that I've acknowledged it, like that, now you have data to go, oh, okay, next time I'm going to be better. But I take the moment to go and make some corrections if you did blow up or
Yeah.
screamed at your kids or your employees or I'm thinking about our audience here. And I know I've had those times too, where it's like, you're going to lose your biggest client because someone messed up. And now you're, me being the business owner is over the top of, oh my God, I'm going to lose my business because of one client. And you take it out on your team.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. Chances, I mean, you shouldn't have your business set up that if you lose one, you're going bankrupt tomorrow. So, like, take that moment, check yourself, check reality, and
Yes.
bring yourself back. I love that. When thinking about, if you're stressed as the business owner, and then you're, you know, pushing that onto your employees, like we know, we've talked about it today. We all know it, that your employees aren't going to be productive if they're in that environment. You, like you said, you need to be able to sleep. We can't have them at night wondering if boss lady is, going to come chew us out again tomorrow. Like, they're not going to get their sleep. They're worried. They're thinking about other things when they should be focused. So you hit the nail on the head that we need to be super conscious as leaders, business owners, leaders, supervisors, whatever, to not be throwing our fight or flight to our teams or our
Right.
family or children or whatever, right? So yeah, super conscious about that. I hear a lot of what you're saying today is just like, you have to be mindful of your mind,
Yes.
and retraining it is what you help people do. Can you tell us a little bit about the people that you work with, and maybe how, if someone's interested in that, they can learn from you?
Yeah, absolutely. I work with a lot of what we call them healthy neurotics, right? I also have a lot of, because I'm based in New York City, I have a lot of Wall Street warriors um, who, really it's about optimization of performance, and whether that's optimization in like their emotional life and how to communicate well as a leader, as a parent, as a spouse or partner, or, just how to put themselves in the right framework for success. Because we all have habitual patterns that get in the way. And so, one of the things I really work on with my clients is recognizing, right? What are those habitual patterns, whether they're mindset patterns, beliefs, and behaviors um, that will stop them from achieving what they want to achieve in life. And then, in terms of the approach, it's really personal. I mean, I usually recommend neurofeedback for my clients just because all of us have that stress response brain. And so to give the brain the training to reset into regulation, I find that alone does a huge amount in terms of giving people now the ability to access their ability to focus, to be creative, to be playful, to be emotionally open and available. I mean, I'll just end with a little humorous story, which is, with my Wall Street warriors who are men. Often what happens with them when they do neurofeedback is and I'm stereotyping, but it is a trend. They tend to be less aware of their felt experience, their emotions, and they tend to be of the fight, flight, freeze strategy. They tend to be more freezers, like they just kind of shove it down. And so often when they do neurofeedback, I usually check in about like session 6 or 7, and I say, how you doing? And he'll say something like, I don't know, but my spouse, boy, does she love that I'm doing the neurofeedback. And I say, oh, that's interesting. What is she noticing? And he'll be like, well, she says that I'm making eye contact more, and I'm asking questions, and I'm just talking more. And I was like, wow, that sounds good. What do you think? And he'd be
Sounds healthy.
Yeah, exactly. So, sometimes we don't even know what is missing until it arises. And sometimes it's our partner or somebody who works from us who presents the mirror and says like, hey, I'm seeing X, right? Whether it's something that's a positive or something that's in the way, and that gives us the opportunity to like take in that information and either kind of keep doing that or see what we need to do to shift things. But going back to your question, I really just try to help people find the tools that are going to work for them so they live their best life.
I love that. That's what we're here for, is helping people be their best friends.
Yes. Yeah. Well said.
Yes. Thank you for that. This has been tremendous. And I know that I can already tell you that you'll be in my head, like 3 weeks from now, be like, well, Natalie said, take a moment. Don't spread your stress on other people. I could just see like, I don't know why I just had that visual in my head, but like, when you sneeze openly and you're just spreading your germs everywhere. So like, that's kind of my visual for like, keep your, check yourself in your stress moments. Don't be spreading that around.
Right. Yes, exactly. Like a sneeze.
Like a sneeze. Be nicer. Appreciate you so much. We'll put your contact information in the show notes as well. And thank you for this. I think you definitely are helping people even just with this one episode.
Well, it's my pleasure. This is a passion of mine. I really want people to be able to access, the best parts of themselves and to know that, the brain's on autopilot. It's not because you don't want to change. It's because it's a part of you that's very difficult to change.
And it's trainable.
And it is trainable. Right. Exactly. Totally
Love
workable. It. Well,
thank you so much.
Yeah. It's been a great pleasure and honor to be here today. And
same here.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please be sure to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. The Women Choosing Growth Show is not just another podcast. It's a tribe of women helping each other grow. So please share this podcast with all the women entrepreneurs that you would love to see succeed. If you'd like to know more about customized business advising through Cultivate Advisors, download business tools, or sign up for upcoming events, visit www.WomenChoosingGrowth.com. Once again, that's www.WomenChoosingGrowth.com. Remember, we are in this together. See you on the next one.